If you are a brown bear, you are hungry. Brown bears in Katmai National Park in Alaska must eat a year's worth of food in about 6 months to survive winter hibernation. Preparation for hibernation guides much of what bears do. This is the fattest time of the year for brown bears in early October, and we're here to answer your questions about these amazing animals and specifically look at some of the differences between the inherited traits and acquired traits of the bears and how those traits might help them survive. Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Fitz. I'm the resident naturalist with explore.org. And joining me is my co host, Park Ranger Felicia Jimenez, who works for Katmai National Park. Ranger Felicia, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And this program is Fat Bear Week in the classroom. Today, we're answering questions from students across the United States about Fat Bear Week, brown bears, and a few about being a park ranger. Thanks to everyone who submitted questions. We asked for questions in advance, and we got a lot of them. Unfortunately, we don't have time to answer them all, but we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. We got questions from students in third grade going all the way up actually to university graduate students, which I think is really amazing. So thanks again for everybody who sent those questions in. And if you're a teacher helping your students learn about brown bears, along with watching this program and the live cams at explore.org/bears, be sure to download the brown bear curriculum that accompanies this broadcast at explore.org/education. Look for the brown bear lesson plan there. You can also find extension activities on Katmai National Park's website at nps.gov/KATM. They got a lot of great stuff there. Let's begin, though, by introducing you just a little bit to Katmai National Park. It's at the northern end of the Alaska Peninsula between the Bering Sea to the west and the Pacific Ocean to the east and the south. And this area was first formally protected as Katmai National Monument in 1918 to preserve the volcanic scenery created by the 1912 eruption of Nova Rupta volcano. That was the largest eruption of the 1900s and one of the largest eruptions in recorded history. Today, Katmai is one of the largest national parks in the United States, and it's now bigger than the state of Connecticut. Its most famous residents, though, aren't the volcanoes, but they are brown bears. And a lot of people are curious about brown bear watching in Katmai. Felicia and Jake from Nexus School kind of starts us off, I think, with our questions today by asking how many people go to Katmai to watch bears and do different things.
Yeah, you just talked about where Katmai is. Katmai is a remote national park in Southwest Alaska that you can only get to by float plane or boat. You have to put a lot of effort to get here, but a lot of people still come. The park gets an average of 25,000 to 37,000 visitors per year. And many of those visitors come to Katmai to see the bears, but people also visit for fishing and to see the dramatic volcanic landscapes that the park protects.
And another question that we had that was a very common one about Katmai came from several different students at several different schools. So Piper from Cherry Hills Village Elementary, Callie from Countryside Homeschool, Mason from Hot Springs Elementary, Michaela from Pond Cove Elementary, Jennifer from West Shore ESD, and Easton from the UW Lab School all asked how many bears. Ranger to answer that question for us. So here is Park Ranger Leon Law talking about that.
Katmai National Park and Preserve is nearly 4.1 million acres. And within that area, we have approximately 2,200 brown bears. Katmai has one of the densest populations of brown bears anywhere in the world.
Katmai is like perfect bear habitat. There are so many bears in the park. It is really hard to imagine. There's almost no place in the park that brown bears don't go. It has some of the highest densities of bears really anywhere in the world. So it's a really special place to go and watch and learn about these amazing animals. So that's just a little bit about the park, but a lot of people are wondering about Fat Bear Week itself. What is this event? That sort of thing. So we did get a lot of questions about that. And somebody actually, the was wondering who thought of this idea. The Soaring Eagles from Davie County High wondered who thought of this. And I will say that was me several years ago, that back in 2014. I thought it would be really fun to have like a fat bear contest where people could vote for who they thought was the fattest and most successful bear at Brooks River of the year. But there's a bit more to Fat Bear Week than just thinking about, how big the animals get. In fact, Felicia, um, Nehemiah, from Denham Springs Elementary was wondering what criteria do park rangers use to select the bears to compete in Fat Bear Week?
Yeah, there are a lot of criteria that we look at to decide which bears make it into the bracket. But first and foremost, the bears need to be fat. We also need to see the bears both in early summer and the fall, and not all the bears use Brooks River at both times of the year. Once we see enough fat bears, we select bears representing different ages and classes. We like to include adult females, both single and with cubs, adult males, and cubs. We choose individuals who store also throughout the season who can exemplify the just that bear's face. People really love a good getting to the bear's successes is what Fat Bear Week is all about.
It's a really fun event, and we hope that everybody has the opportunity to vote. In fact, Trent from North Oldham Middle School and Leah from Central Park Elementary were wondering, how do you vote? And to vote in Fat Bear Week, which this year is between October 5 and October 11, you want to go to fatbearweek.org and cast your vote there. So there will be two bears matched up against one another, and you can find those bears. Click on the bear who you think best exemplifies fatness in brown bears. You'll have to enter an email address and then hit submit. So look for those different things underneath the bears that you're selecting, but it should work on any device that hooks up to the internet. So whether that's a phone or a laptop or a tablet or a desktop computer, it should work on all of those. But Felicia, people wonder, a little bit about the point of Fat Bear Week, and what about the bears themselves? Do they win anything? In fact, Amelia from Octorara Elementary asked, when a fat bear wins the contest, do you give them any prize, or do they just have bragging rights?
Yeah, that's actually just one of the best parts about the contest is that the bears don't know what's going on. It's just bragging rights. And, while we hope that they might get excited, the truth is they barely notice. The only competition in their minds is the competition for the best fishing spots. For bears, fat means survival, and Fat Bear Week is just another way for us to celebrate their success. So purely bragging rights, it's just a lot of fun for us to get to watch them get really, really fat.
It is a lot of fun. It is, serious business too for the bears.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing to consider just how fat they actually get and how much weight they gain. In fact, Colin from Hoover Elementary and Harmon from Light Ridge High asked, how do you weigh the bears to know how much weight they have actually gained? And we don't weigh the bears actually at all. So we can make some educated guesses about how much they weigh based on studies that were done in the past where they tranquilized bears and they basically just put them on a scale to know how much they weighed. But the bears at Brooks River in Katmai National Park, where we watch the bear cams, they're not physically handled or tagged in any way. So we don't know specifically what they weigh, but we know that in midsummer, so let's say right around the end of July, many of the adult male bears weigh probably about 700 to 900 pounds. So big animals overall, but that's not peak fat for them. They still grow a lot before they go into their dens. And at this time of the year, the largest bears that we'll have at Brooks River weigh probably 1,200 pounds or more. So they really balloon into these giant, giant animals. But we don't weigh or handle the bears at Brooks River. So if you're wondering about that, yeah, we're just making mostly educated guesses. And Felicia, Eden from Licking Heights Local Schools was wondering about who has won in the past, more or more females.
We have had both male and female winners, and it's been even among both. There have been two male winners. 480 Otis, who is the reigning Fat Bear Week winner. He won in 2014, 2016, 2017, and last year's competition in 2021. 747 is another male who he won in 2020. And then there have also been two female winners, 409 Beadnose, who won in 2015 and 2018, and then 435 Holly, who won in 2019. Our previous winners, Bear 480, 747, and 435, are competing again in this year's Fat Bear Week. So do you think another one of them could win another crown? It's pretty even among both, so let's see which one will tip the scale.
It's going to be a difficult choice, I think, for many of us. And this last question about Fat Bear Week is, I think, an important one to answer, and this came from Liv at Owen Elementary, who writes, why do you still call it the fattest bear contest? Can't you change it to the biggest bear? Even bears don't like to be called fat. And we call it Fat Bear Week because in bears, fatness is like a measure of success. Unlike people, bears don't eat year round. Brown bears and Katmai hibernate for the winter. We'll talk more about hibernation and what that means for them. But in some, that does mean that they have to eat a year's worth of food in about 6 months. So for bears, when they go into their dens in the fall, the fatter they are, generally the healthier they are, and the more likely they are to survive winter hibernation. So for them, that body shape and body size is a measure of success for them. And that's why we call it Fat Bear Week rather than just the biggest bear overall. Now that you know some of the basics about Katmai National Park and Fat Bear Week, let's learn a little bit more about the bears we see at Brooks River. And I have a question for everyone to think about while we're talking about this. That question is, why are there differences in the ways bears look and behave? And a lot of the reasons bears do different things or they look differently is due to their inherited traits or their acquired traits. Let's first talk about inherited traits. These are the characteristics that are passed on from biological parents to their offspring. Inherited physical traits are things like fur color in a bear, maybe the shape of their ears, maybe the size of their hump on their back. My fur color came from my parents, as did my eye color as well. And those physical characteristics, Felicia, actually help biologists and rangers keep track of the bears. In fact, Sophia from Jarrett Middle School asked that question. How are you able to track the bears that you talk about?
Yeah, bears have individual physical characteristics that make them unique, like those inherited traits we're talking about. Our park biologists carefully monitor these features like fur color, scarring, the shapes of their faces or their ears. Even behavior can help us identify individual bears. Each bear gets assigned a number, and we take a lot of pictures so that we can maintain detailed records. And we don't collar or tag the bears, so we're not necessarily tracking them. But for bears that regularly use Brooks River every summer, we learn to recognize them from these unique physical characteristics, and we can see their stories develop year after year. So that's kind of the way that we keep track of our bears.
And those inherited traits really play a big role in that. One of the really pretty inherited traits that bears have, and one of maybe the more mysterious ones as well, is or has to do with first-year cubs that are called spring cubs. In fact, Brandon, Travis, Connor, and Zach from Burnt Hills, Ballston Lake High wondered, why do spring cubs have a band of lighter fur? What does it do for them? And if you're not familiar with that term spring cub, that means first year cubs. So those were cubs that were born last winter. So any of the first year cubs that you see running around Katmai right now, they're probably only about 9 months old or so. And many of them have a lighter collar of fur, right, kind of wrapping around their neck, the base of the neck to sort of like right around the top of their neck or their shoulder areas. And that's called a natal collar. These are Bear 94's cubs from this year. And I don't think anyone knows why they have that lighter band of fur around their neck. It doesn't seem to help serve as camouflage, for instance. It doesn't seem to help mother bears find their cubs, at least as far as we know. So I think it's still a mystery why spring cubs have that natal collar itself. So maybe if you're looking for something to study in the future, that's a question that remains unanswered. Maybe you can, someone out there can try to tackle that one. But that's an inherited trait that comes from, is passed from mom and dad to those baby bears, that fur color around their necks. It often fades by the time they become older bears, though, so you don't really see that in fully grown adults. Let's talk now maybe a little bit about inherited behavioral traits. So these are different than physical characteristics. They're traits such as instincts that a bear knows how to do, something that they're programmed to behave in a certain way. And Felicia, a lot of these instincts kind of go back to the fact that bears hibernate. In fact, Dakota from BCES school asked, why do the bears get so fat?
Yeah, bears get so fat so they can survive hibernation. Hibernation is an adaptation that animals use to conserve energy during the winter. Here in Alaska, winters are really harsh. It's very cold. There isn't a lot of food around for the bears. So when the bears go into hibernation, they dig a den where they're going to remain all winter. The bears don't eat or drink during the fall, and all they live off of is their fat reserves. If a bear doesn't get fat, it won't survive hibernation. So bulking up and getting really, really fat is super important to them. All the fat that they build during this season has to get them through the winter. So they only have 6 months to eat a year's worth of food. It's an impressive feat for a bear to build up that much bulk. So we're going to cheer them on as they munch their way to survival.
It has a follow-up question to that, Felicia. Gracie from Live Oak High School was wondering, when does hibernation begin for the bears?
The bears at Katmai are typically going to start entering their dens in October or November. So yeah, this is where they're going to stay through the winter, living off of their fat reserves, and they're going to emerge from their dens in the spring, usually around April.
Of course, bears have this motivation to get very fat because of their need to hibernate in the wintertime. And Alana from Buxton Center School was wondering, what happens if a bear gets too fat? Do you think that's possible, Felicia?
Yeah, it's a valid question to ask. Just how big these Katmai bears are. We see their bellies dragging on the ground as they walk, but getting fat is healthy for the bears because it means they're building up crucial fat reserves to survive the winter. It's serious business because that bear's body fat is the primary source of energy and hydration during hibernation. And females, too, they have an even higher stake at getting fat. They won't become pregnant without approximately 25% body fat to have cubs. Higher fat for females also means more offspring. So the fatter the bear, the better. So yeah, maybe if they have a hard time walking or climbing like 747, that might be too fat. But for now, we just want the bears to get even fatter. So the fatter the bear, the better.
Yeah, that amount of body fat on them means a very different thing for them compared to a person, and they don't experience a lot of the ailments that large body size has on people, or even our pets too. Like a dog can get diabetes or heart disease if it's too fat, but bears, they don't suffer from those things, amazingly. So they're remarkable animals in so many ways. And then this next question, actually, that I'm going to answer is another way that they are remarkable. Brandon from Burnt Hills Ballston Lake High School wonders, do the bears poop while they are hibernating? And believe it or not, they don't. Not only are the bears not eating or drinking, they also don't urinate, they don't poop while they are hibernating. So they are able to recycle all of their bodily waste into keeping themselves healthy. And that's something that a person can't do. Humans do not have the mechanisms that allow them to recycle bodily waste without poisoning our own systems. But in the wintertime, the bear's kidneys basically shut down. Their digestive systems basically are just tuned into recycling bodily waste to keep their muscle and their bones healthy. So they don't poop in hibernation, no. So it's sometimes 6 months or more between bathroom breaks for them. kind of an amazing part of their lives overall. That's a little bit about inherited traits in bears. Next, let's talk about acquired traits. Acquired traits are different in that they are characteristics an individual develops during its lifetime. Acquired traits, physical traits specifically include things that happen to someone, such as like getting a scar or gaining or losing weight, for instance. Acquired behavioral traits include things that someone learns. So for you're a bear, that might be something like a fishing technique. All of those things combined help us to identify bears as individuals at Brooks River, and it helps those, especially those acquired traits, behavioral traits, help them to survive. And in a way, getting fat is an acquired trait. They do that every year, and they work hard to do that. And we posed this next question to Ranger Chris at Katmai. This question was asked by Matthew at CHS School and by the Room 11 Autism Focus class at Holland Crest Middle School. They wondered, what is the average weight of a brown bear in Katmai?
My question is, what is the average weight of a brown bear at Katmai? That's a great question. The average weight for a male bear is about between 700 and 900 pounds. The females are a little smaller, could be around 300 to 500 pounds, unless we're talking about the fall, in which case they're all going to be a little bigger. The males can be up to 1,400 pounds. It's hard to weigh them, of course, but those are the estimates. The reason they're so much bigger, they have an excellent food resource. The salmon run is one of the best in the world, and they have access to it. So they're able to eat plenty and gain enough weight to sustain themselves through hibernation.
And speaking of fish, follow-up question to that came from many people as well, including Kellen, who's homeschooled, Katie at the Ida Sioux School, Benny at Lakeside, Titan at Pioneer School, Cindy at Somerville, Bryce at West Shore ESD, Sammy at White Plains, Fiona at Montgomery Elementary, and Phelan at Clarkstown High School North, who all wondered how many fish do the bears eat in a day. We asked that question to Ranger Keith, and he has a remarkable statistic to share on how many fish they can put in their bellies.
Believe it or not, bears can eat almost 40 salmon a day. That's the equivalent of eating about 20 cheeseburgers.
That's an incredible amount of food, right, Felicia? And it varies, from bear to bear. The younger bears are not going to be able to eat that much, but on a very good day, some of the very big adult males fishing at Brooks Falls can eat dozens of fish every day. And a good follow-up question to that actually came from Isabel, who is at the University of Vermont, who was wondering about how many calories do bears eat per day when they're bulking up, and how many calories are in the average salmon. What about that, Felicia?
Yeah, well, it takes a serious amount of calories for bears to bulk up in the way that they do. So we can take advantage of this. Let's do a little math, and we're going to assume that it's a big male bear, right? So if the average sockeye salmon contains 4,005 calories, some bears, big bear, can eat up to 40 salmon per day. How many calories is that bear consuming a day? If you get the math right, that bear is consuming over 140,000 calories per day. It's no wonder why the bears get so big and so fat in such a short period of time. But that bulking up period is really crucial to the bear's survival. The salmon are only plentiful during a short window of time, so bears need to gain as much weight as they can to survive that really harsh winter. It's a lot of calories.
Tremendous. And if you're watching the bear cams at Katmai and you're wondering again how many calories the bears are eating, you can do that math. 4,500 calories per fish in early summer, and just multiply that by how many fish the bears are eating. And I think you might be very amazed by the amount of food that they put in their stomach. But salmon aren't the only things that bears eat. In fact, we had several questions about that. AP from West Shore ESD, Devin from Sunny Sands Elementary, Laura from Word of Life Lutheran School, and Annika from the Eisenhower Middle School all asked, do bears, variations of what bears eat. Somebody asked, do bears really eat honey? Another person asked, what do they eat? And another person asked, do they have a favorite food? And in Katmai National Park, it definitely seems like salmon are their favorite food, but that's not the only thing that they will eat. They are omnivores like us. So they eat a combination of plant and animal foods. They love foods that are high in protein, high in sugar, and high in fat. So again, not really unlike us. Uh, Foods that are very high in fat and sugar help them to put on the body mass that they need for the winter. Foods that are high in protein help them to maintain muscle mass. And in Katmai, when bears can combine their diet with, of salmon with maybe berries that contain a lot of sugar, that's like the ultimate bear diet for them. It's almost like the perfect bear diet. And maybe that's why Katmai has so many brown bears living at such high densities and living in close proximity to one another. So yes, they are omnivores. They like to eat many different things. And if you were to list out all of the different bear foods that bears eat across, North America, and in Asia and in Europe, it would be hundreds and hundreds of different wild foods. So they eat pretty much anything that they can put in their stomach and digest. Those acquired and inherited traits are important to help bears survive. We have, the fat bear, weak bears, maybe to talk about specifically with the inherited and acquired traits, and maybe looking at them and talking about one aspect of each one of these bears. So this is always a fun part of the program to do, Felicia, because we can look at a few of the fat bear, weak bears. The first one that we'll talk about, though, is a bear that a lot of people love to watch, and you were talking about how you like to watch this bear. This is number 32, Chunk. He has a big scar across his muzzle. Is that an acquired trait or is that an inherited trait?
It's definitely an acquired trait. Chunk must have gotten into some kind of fight and sustained a wound. Now it's a scar that's going to mark him. So definitely a really good example of a trait in a bear.
And another example from our fat bear, weak bears is number 128. She is nicknamed Grazer. And her trait that we'll talk about is her defense of her cubs. And she is maybe the most defensive mother bear that I have ever seen. Mother bears are famously defensive. Their cubs, especially when they're young, are vulnerable to a variety of threats. So mother bears want to protect their cubs from those threats, including other bears. So Grazer often gets in the face of other bears. She backs them down. She charges at them. She roars at them. She'll even swat at them with her paws or bite them when necessary. So she's very defensive. And I think that trait is probably both an inherited trait and an acquired trait. She probably inherited a little bit of her disposition from her parents, but that behavior is also reinforced each time that she successfully defends her cubs. So it's almost like, hey, I defended my cub once and it worked. Maybe I'm going to do it again, because that's a positive reward for her over the long term. So sometimes a little bit of the behaviors that you see in bears can be both inherited and acquired. Our next bear, though, Felicia, is he's such a fun bear to watch, and he does some unique things. This is number 164, and he does something that no other bear really does.
Yeah, 164 likes to fish at the very base of the falls, which is an acquired trait, something that he's learned is a strategy that's worked for him. So definitely something that was acquired.
And that's not something he was taught. We had never seen a bear really fishing in that spot before. So he figured it out on his own, just by, putting two and two together. He saw a fish there and he wondered, what, maybe I can make a living in that spot. He's a kind of an amazing bear to watch. The last two fat bear, weak bears that we'll talk about are related individuals. And this is number 335 and her mother, number 435, Holly. So this is 335. She is a young bear. She's just a few years old, experiencing life on her own for the first time. So this is her in late summer. And her mother, number 435, Holly, is also very blonde in color. And she holds that color even into late summer when she is very fat, like she is right now in this photo. She looks kind of like a big toasted marshmallow to me. So she's a very beautiful bear in a lot of ways. But this is the fur color between Holly and her daughter 335 is an inherited trait. And we can sometimes see that being passed on from mother to offspring. And that's, I think, a fascinating aspect of their lives that makes them, again, similar to us. Well, we have, fur color, hair color that we get from our parents, just like bears do. Felicia, we do have a few other bear questions to answer, though, before we get to some park ranger questions. And I think these ones are interesting questions to answer. So we'll try to get to them very quickly here before we conclude our broadcast. But somebody, actually Moz from Carver Elementary, was wondering about how old are the bears. We looked at a very young bear there with 335, and then mom 435 Holly. But there's a big age range for a lot of our bears in Katmai.
Yeah, we have a whole range of ages for all the bears competing for the Fat Bear Week title. I'll start chronologically. So the youngest is going to be our Fat Bear Junior winner. That's 909's yearling cub, who is about 1.5 years old. Next is 335, a 2.5-year-old subadult. 901 is the next bear. It's an adult female. She's around 6 years old. 164 is also close in age to her, is also approximately 6 years old. 151 Walker is an adult male in his mid-teens. 32 Chunk, another adult male in his late teens, who's also close in range to 128 Grazer, also in her late teens. And then bears 854 and 856 are adult male, are around 20 years old. 747 is another adult male. He's in his mid-20s. And then 480 Otis and 435 Holly are some of the oldest bears in the bracket. They're both in their mid to late 20s. On average, though, male bears live... Oh, sorry.
No. Please continue.
But on average, though, male bears live to reach around their early 20s. Females live a little bit longer, some around their mid-20s. But at least anecdotally, the bears at Brooks River seem to be doing really well. We have a whole bunch of old bears.
It is a tough life to be a wild brown bear. So yeah, to be able to live into your mid-20s or beyond is quite a feat. If you see a 30-year-old bear in the wild, that might be like a 100-year-old person. So yeah, very successful bears at Brooks River. And one of the other interesting aspects of bears is they get really fat, but they also give birth in the middle of winter when they are hibernating. So mother bears give birth around the end of January or early February. And Alex from Jarrett Middle School was wondering, how are you able to distinguish between when a female bear is getting fat versus when she is pregnant? And you really can't, because when cubs are born, I'll let Felicia answer this next question, because we had lined this one up for her, and I think that'll help explain why you can't really tell a female bear is pregnant. Felicia Jackson from Pioneer Elementary asked, how big is a baby bear when it is born?
Yeah, baby bears undergo a dramatic transformation in their first year of life. When bears are born in the den, they're born hairless. They're about the size of a soup can, and they weigh about 1 pound. So that's kind of why you can't really tell if a female is fat or pregnant, just because their babies are so small. But by the end of their first year, the baby bears are super fluffy, and they can weigh up to 80 pounds.
So a tremendous growth rate that they experience in their first year. They grow proportionally more than even the biggest bears at Brooks River, and maybe some of the bears like Otis or 747, for instance. So yeah, it's amazing to see how much they grow in that first year of life. The final few questions that we have don't necessarily have to do with bears, but they do have to do with national parks, and specifically with the life of a park ranger. And since we have a park ranger sitting here with me today, I want to take advantage of this opportunity and ask Felicia some questions from some students about the life of a park ranger. So there was several classes actually at the Rolling Green Elementary School, Mrs. Moore's class, Miss Milani's class, and Mrs. Nedved's class, who all asked, what do park rangers do?
Yeah, park rangers, we do a lot of different jobs. We wear a lot of hats, and there are so many different kinds of rangers. Even within Katmai, there are park rangers who are biologists, and they study all of the flora and the fauna in the park. There are bear management rangers who study the bears and manage bear-human interactions within camp. Archaeology rangers study the human history of Katmai. There's a lot of it, very rich. And then law enforcement rangers and rangers who work in maintenance keep the park up and running. That park wouldn't be running without them. And I personally am an interpretive ranger. It's my job to talk to visitors and provide opportunities to help people connect with the resources and learn all about Katmai and the bears.
When I was a park ranger, I was also an interpretive ranger. I really enjoyed helping people have a good experience when they were visiting parks and sharing, the wildlife of national parks through webcams like we have now on explore.org. So many different types of rangers out there. Uh, Felicia, another question related to park rangering came from the 8th grade class at Yakima Nation Tribal School, who wondered, what education level do you need to become a park ranger?
Well, personally, I have a college degree. I have a Bachelor of Science in Ecology. And most rangers do have a 4-year degree, but you don't necessarily need one. There isn't one direct path to becoming a park ranger. Some people study biology, natural resources, education, history, and more. And, lots of different jobs too. So there's no one real path. Yeah.
And I would also recommend too that if you have parks in your area, if you can find opportunities to volunteer or work in even like a local park, that could be very valuable experience that can help you understand more of the ranger life and what it takes to run parks and protect parks. Um, and so you don't have to like go to a far-flung place like Katmai immediately, but you can get there through a lot of different ways. So thanks for that answer, Felicia. And our final question for you, Felicia, is from several students, Ariella, Destiny, Maraja, and they are all from McDonald High School. They wondered, do you like being a park ranger?
Yeah, I love being a park ranger. Not only do I get to live in really cool places like Katmai, and have a job where I have the privilege of seeing these big brown bears every day, I also get to help people connect to such a special place and all of their parks. It's really rewarding to see people fall in love with the park and get so excited to see the bears. It's one of the best parts of my job. Plus, I mean, Katmai makes a really sweet office location.
And when I was a park ranger, yeah, I loved living in parks. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to be a park ranger. You can live at Brooks River, surrounded by brown bears, which is sometimes stressful, but also really exciting at the same time. So thanks to everybody who submitted questions for our Fat Bear Week in the Classroom program for 2022. I wish we had time to answer all of the questions. We got so many really great questions. We just didn't have time to fit them all into our broadcast. The brown bears at Brooks River show us that there's more than one way to make a living. And park rangers help, protect these bears in these amazing landscapes. And when you look at the bears, consider their many physical traits and how they are inherited, and also consider the bear's acquired traits and how they are an important component to their survival. Each bear that you see at Brooks River is a unique individual, and a bear's combination of traits provides it with the tools and skills necessary to survive in a tough and competitive environment. Felicia, thanks so much for joining me today. It's been fun talking with you, and I'm glad you were able to take the time to share your expertise.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And that is Park Ranger Felicia Jimenez with Katmai National Park. My name is Mike Fitz with explore.org. Happy Fat Bear Week, everybody, and have a great day.